All right, everybody's ready. Hopefully your head isn't swelling. This is a lot of information, I know, but this is good stuff for you. And I know for some of you, I know some of this is probably going over your head, but if you can just get a slither of it, it's going to really impact your business and it's going to help you take your business to the next level. What I want to do before we go into trust, which is the next thing that we're actually going to do, is I want to really kind of talk about that reasoning that I spoke of earlier as to why we're here and why it's very important that we get our documentation together and that we make sure that we have good, viable entities structured and formatted that are going to actually do what they were intended for. Like I said, guys, the worst time to find out that you don't have a company is when you need a company, okay? And you got one of those things that I told you about earlier. You got one of these in the mail, or you got carrier service coming to you and you're signing for this certified mail and you're being served with a lawsuit. So usually when we're in session live with this, you guys actually, everybody that's in attendance actually has this document in front of you. And I tell you not to touch it until I'm ready to actually go over it with you. And typically I do this from the outset of the meeting or the conference. So we're well into the conference, but we're gonna go back through this because I think it's important. Because a lot of times, guys, what we do is we don't do the things necessary because we don't see the importance and we feel like, well, that's not gonna happen to me or it can't happen to me. Like I told you, it doesn't matter how well you do your business, how well you're performing, you're doing everything ethically and above board. There's always situations where someone can allege something and possibly bring a lawsuit against you. Have a tenant that trips and falls in your home. You have your daughter or kid backing out of the parking lot or something at Walmart, hit somebody, and now you're involved in a lawsuit because you're the guardian or custodian of those kids, and you have the deep pockets and they're driving your car and say they're under 18. So now you're involved in a lawsuit. So let's talk about a little bit why it's important. Guys, several years ago, I had one of my friends who lives in Atlanta, Georgia. This is when I first got started, and he was seeing the level of success that I was having. We were both military retirees. And at some point in time, he decided, man, you're doing great. I think I need to do some real estate. So I actually assisted him and helped him get started in the Atlanta area. He went out. I actually went to Georgia several times and helped him buy some properties. And so he was accumulating properties, and I told him that he needed to set up an LLC. And so every time we would talk, you know, we were boys, so we'd be talking, and I'd say, hey man, you got your LLC set up? Man, I still got to do it, man. I ain't gotten around to it. I'm gonna get it though. I know I got to do it. So this went on for years. And at some point in time, he called me one day down and out because he had been served a lawsuit. And basically what happened in this case is that he had a tenant that was slow pay. And so at some point in time, he got aggravated with the tenant and decided he was going to go downtown Fulton County, Georgia, and file an eviction. Well, he went and filed the eviction, and about 6 days later, he gets served with a lawsuit. He got served with a lawsuit basically from the attorney, plaintiff's attorney, pretty much saying that, dear Mr. So-and-so, I'm the attorney representing, you know, your tenant at 123 Main Street, who, by the way, has vacated the premises due to the following. Please see the attached Exhibit A regarding the black mold that was found in your property. And so basically, he went from supposedly evicting this tenant to now he's having to respond to a lawsuit because she's come up with a way being vindictive to get back at him. So, and by the way, little Johnny has been sick on and off for several months, even possibly a year after staying in your property. So they actually had lab results, supposedly black mold and whole 9 yards. So he calls me up, being sued, scared to death, doesn't know what he's gonna do, and definitely regretting that he didn't have a company. So remember, he had a big, nice home down there in Atlanta, and now he's sitting here with everything he owns. Like I told you guys earlier, everything you own personally now. Your house, your car, your clothing, everything is really at risk now because you might have to sell some stuff or to get rid of this lawsuit. Okay, so anyway, he eventually caused a lot of sleepless nights, and like I said, that's the best weight reduction program that there is when you get served a lawsuit. You want to lose some weight? I told you earlier, forget about Jenny Craig and all that other stuff. Get served a lawsuit. You'll have some sleepless nights and lose some weight. So basically $30,000+ later, paying attorney fees and whatever, he was able to settle that, and he got out, he got out for what he felt pretty good. And insurance paid for all this stuff and whatever. But the bottom line is, guys, the aggravation, the stress, and turmoil that you have, and specifically when you're sitting there thinking about, hey, everything I have is at risk now because it's personal. It was against him personally. You want business to be business and personal to be personal, okay? So you don't want what you're doing in your business to affect you and what you're doing in your personal residence. So with that being said, let's go through. I want to just kind of read something to you, and I want you to, while you're sitting there, hopefully, for some of you guys that got rental properties and you already know right now that you aren't doing what you're supposed to do. So, if you need to take time out and go to the bathroom while I'm reading, we'll all understand. You'll be all right. Because you're going to make some changes after this weekend. So here it says, in the circuit court for Guilford County, Sandy Smith gives her address, Greensboro, North Carolina, as the plaintiff against you, landlord, 166 Maple Street, Greensboro, North Carolina. Service owner, you see, personal agent to you, landlord. And you, landlord, represents you. All right? So you, landlord, just put your name there. Your name or your company name, whatever you want to say. It says, now comes Sandy Smith herein by her attorneys, how to cheat them and sue them. My favorite people, the ones, that's the law firm that's bringing this lawsuit. How to cheat them and sue them. I showed y'all those individuals earlier. All right. And hereby files this lawsuit against the defendants. You, landlord, personally, and in support thereof, states as follows: that the plaintiff is a resident of Guilford County, North Carolina, that the defendant, you landlord, is engaged in the business of renting single-family homes in the state of North Carolina and regularly engages in the practice of property rental in Guilford County, North Carolina. It says that the defendant, you landlord, is a resident of Greensboro, North Carolina, and business office located at personal residence. Personal residence. Y'all see that? This fool has his address is on public record. So your personal residence is your office. All right. So there goes a mistake there. That the defendant, you landlord, is a doing business as engaged in the practice of renting homes in the state of North Carolina by and through you landlord. Doing business as means what? You're operating personally. Okay. You're just Joe Smith doing business as ABC Properties, but you don't have a company. The amount of this claim exceeds the jurisdiction limit of the Magistrate Court of North Carolina, i.e. $30,000, and the appropriate venue for this claim is Guilford County, North Carolina, as defendants maintain their principal place of business in Guilford County, North Carolina. And the incident of negligence occurred in Guilford County, North Carolina. That you landlord is the business owner. That on February 13, 2016, you landlord was the owner of the property located at said address. That on about February 13th, you landlord provided a rental property to the plaintiff in Greensboro, North Carolina, in the form of a single-family residence. 9, that during the plaintiff's lease agreement beginning February 13, 2016, you landlord was acting as an agent employee of you landlord personally and was providing rental property services to the plaintiff within the scope of that agency, employment, or business. That during the plaintiff's tenure from February 13, 2016, the toxic black mold identified in said residence caused severe respiratory infection and conscious pain and suffering to the plaintiff. That during the plaintiff's tenancy from February 13, 2016, you landlord owned a duty to the plaintiff to ensure an acceptable standard of maintenance and care within the requirements of North Carolina General Statute 42, to landlord's duty to maintain habitable premises. And you landlord breached this standard of care by allowing the mold condition to exist. That as a direct and approximate result of the breach of the applicable standard of landlord's duty to maintain habitable premises, you landlord, which resulted in the deterioration of plaintiff's respiratory system, causing severe rash, chronic lung illness, suffered conscious pain and suffering in the past, and will suffer conscious pain and suffering into the future, incurred past and future lost wages, suffered loss of earning capacity in the past and into the future, suffered loss of household services in the past and into the future, incurred medical expenses in the past and will incur future medical expenses, suffered mental anguish, suffered permanent physical injuries, and was required to undergo additional medical procedures and has sustained other damages. That all the injuries and damages sustained by the plaintiff were the direct and proximate result of the negligent actions of you landlord, without any act or omission on the part of the plaintiff directly thereunto contributing. That the plaintiff did not assume risk of her injuries. That on or about July 10, 2016, the plaintiff filed a claim against above described defendants in the Alternative Dispute Resolution Office with the required certificate of qualified expert, on and so forth. It says that on or about September 1st, 2016, the Director of Alternative Dispute Resolution Office ordered that the case of Sandy Smith versus you landlord be transferred to the Circuit Court for Guilford County. See Exhibit 2 attached. 17, that the plaintiff has complied with all the conditions precedent mandated by state law to pursue the claim at bar against above named defendant. The plaintiff alleges count 1, business malpractice. The plaintiff realleges and incorporates by reference herein all the allegations contained in paragraph 1 through 17, that you landlord deviated from the acceptable standard of responsibility to maintain a fit and habitable premises. Wherefore, I'm going to go on down. The plaintiff, Sandy Smith, claims damage against you landlord individually and demands judgment against you landlord in the amount of $2,750,000 in compensatory damages, plus interest and cost, and for further relief that this honorable court determines necessary and appropriate. Count 2, negligence and failure to maintain. The plaintiff realleges and incorporates by reference herein of all the allegations contained in paragraphs 1 through 19 above, that in the time of the residence provided to the plaintiff on February 13, 2016, you landlord was acting within the scope of his business and agency with a doing business as. Wherefore, the plaintiff, Sandy Smith, claims damages against you landlord individually and demands judgment against you landlord in the amount of $1,500,000 in compensatory damages, plus interest and costs, and for any further relief that this honorable court determines necessary and appropriate. Respectfully submitted. How to Cheatham and Suum, LLC. Exhausting, but necessary. Guys, that can come knocking at your door real quick. And it can come knocking at your door from a number of different angles, guys. You can be doing everything you're supposed to do. So it's important that you take what we're doing over this weekend seriously, and that you go back and you look at your house and get your house in order so that you can go out and make sure that you have everything you need to protect your assets, protect yourself and your family from what could possibly be a frivolous lawsuit that you have to defend, and you're not set up properly because we had the misfortune of going on Secretary of State's website ourselves, downloaded articles of organization, filled them out, and didn't even have any clue of anything else that we needed, other documentation that we needed to make sure that we had the proper entity. And so you do not want to get that. Just reading that to me, if anybody on there is nervous, I get nervous reading it, because I know that that's real and serious stuff. Like I said, yours truly, we'll get into this a little bit tomorrow, but yours truly got about a 40-something page one here that made me be out to be everything but a child of God. Said that even me putting out bandit signs was basically a fraudulent activity, because basically what they said in that lawsuit is that I was claiming that I could buy houses and I couldn't buy a stick of bubble gum at the store. So what I'm trying to tell you guys is that these attorneys will drum up this paperwork And reading it, like I said, when you sit there and start reading it, you know, your hands start getting nervous and whatever, and you will go to the bathroom. And like I said previously, again, we want to make sure that we have our act and our house in order so that we can at least